There are two kind of places in this world, places that are a pleasure to go to, and these places. This is my top 10 scary holes. Number 10. Old Newgate Prison. Often referred to hell above ground, you would rather wish yourself death than to be doomed to this London prison. Prisoners were kept in a small, dark, mouldy cell and awoken every day at 4 a.m. to begin their day. Shackled with chains that made it near impossible to walk, they were put to work, and if guards felt they didn't work hard enough, they were flogged and hung upside down from the stocks. When they were fed, they didn't have plates and ate from the floor. Their beds were made from straw and were infested with rats and other parasites. Many men tried to escape, and many died in the process. Number 9. The Spooner Well. Spooner Well has some dark history attached to it. During the American Revolutionary War, a woman named Bathsheba Spooner, married to Joshua Spooner, had an affair with a British deserter. Upon finding out she was pregnant, Bathsheba began a plot with 2 other soldiers to murder her husband before he could find out. One night when Joshua returned home, he was ambushed and killed. It was then that Bathsheba and the soldiers threw his body down their well. Not even 24 hours later, they were arrested for their horrible deed and soon after convicted. Mrs. Spooner, who was 5 months pregnant at the time, begged for her execution to be postponed until she gave birth. It was denied and she was hung, the first woman to be hung in the US. Number 8. Dead Man's Hole. Dead Man's Hole, also nicknamed the Devil's Well, is filled with a gory past. Located in Texas, it goes as far as 45 feet deep, and around 17 corpses have been recovered, all from the US state's Civil War period. It was used by Confederate soldiers against the Union sympathizers. People would help or shelter Union soldiers. First, someone would be hanged by the oak tree that stood all too conveniently close to the hole. Once dead, their ropes were cut and they would plummet the 45 feet into the sinkhole. And if by some miracle you are able to survive both these things, the hole is filled with toxic gas that would definitely finish you off. Today, the hole is covered and a plaque marks its place, honouring those who were killed there. Number 7. Catawba Murder Hole. A cave system in Catawba, Virginia has been nicknamed the Murder Hole for the various lives it has apparently claimed. Legend has it that it has been the place where a couple committed suicide due to their families disapproving of their love, as well as the body dump site for a poor unfortunate salesman when a farmer killed him for his tools. These being just a few of the many tales passed on for years. One death, however, can be confirmed, and that death is of a cave climber, David Spencer. In 1958, David was descending inside of the cave when his rope suddenly snapped and he fell to his death. This, of course, was later found to be a tragic accident, as his rope had been weakened by cleaning supplies when it was stored away in a closet. Many people were known to get trapped in the cave, and it was then shut down in 1960. But it hasn't stopped many people from tempting fate and venturing down the murder-acquainted hole. Number 6. Roman Well of Belgrade Fortress. Ironically, not being Roman at all, was actually built by the Austrians. However, its name is far less interesting when compared to its history. When 37 traitors failed to let invaders into their city and were caught, they were punished by being lowered into the well. They were left to starve to near death, and only then were they thrown knives to kill and eat one another. Later, in the late 1800s, an assassin failed to kill the king at the time. She was kept prisoner at the bottom of the well and found dead a few days later. The well was said to impress Alfred Hitchcock, an author of horror. Number 5. Killing Cave of Phnom Sempo. It's almost hard to believe that just in the 1970s, people were still using caves to kill and torture people. But in Cambodia, they've turned their dark past into something of a celebration. Visitors can see the remains of victims who were thrown in by the dictator, Khmer Rouge. He would have people beaten, then tossed into these caves where they were tortured and left to starve to death with their injuries. As the bodies began to pile up, the landing became softer, and soon the deaths became more and more agonizing. Number 4. The Haunted Mammoth Caves. Witches, warlocks, and a pinned explorer. Sounds like the start to a bad joke, but in Kentucky, these are claims of what is haunting the Mammoth Caves. The more sinister of the trio is the warlocks, whom were said to have thrown a pregnant woman to her death, killed animals and drank their blood. The pinned explorer, Floyd Collins, however, had got his leg trapped under a rock and was unable to get help for 2 weeks. Many have claimed that he has saved them from certain death. A woman claiming that he stopped her from going over the same ledge by grabbing her shoulder and pulling her away, while he has thrown whiskey bottles at others who approached too closely. Number 3. Well of Sacrifice. Best known for its Mayan pyramids, Chichen Itza has another attraction not too far from it, a sinkhole that recovered at least 120 human skeletons. At least 8 lower leg bones of these children show that they were beaten before they were thrown into the well. And while the pit has over 65 feet in depth, it has a watery bottom, so one could perhaps survive the fall, but then slowly drown and become one with the victims of the well. Number 2. The Zinda Bhaag Pit. 2 British soldiers, Connolly and Stoddart, were mercifully executed after 4 years of torture in the Zinda prison. Why mercifully, you ask? Stoddart was given the task of delivering a letter to Emir of Bukhara, the ruler of Afghanistan. The letter stated that the British had no intention of continuing their invasion, but Stoddart had arrived to meet Emir with no gift, and he saw this as a great insult and had him jailed and tortured. When Connolly went to retrieve Stoddart, he was jailed as well and sent through the same torture. For those 4 years, Connolly and Stoddart were being subjected to torture. The worst of it being sent to a 4-meter deep hole filled with bugs. Crawling, stinging, itching, biting bugs. And if that wasn't enough, the guards would occasionally dump more bugs onto them. Number 1. Devil's Hole. Many claim that once you go into this New York cave, you either do not come out or you come out with your hair as white as snow. They claim that the evil one lives inside the cave and it is a place that you don't want to trespass. Perhaps that's because back in 1763, there was a massacre at Devil's Hole and the spirits of those whom were murdered are at unrest. Sanisa warriors had chosen the Devil's Hole as the perfect place to attack the English wagon that would pass by at noon. There were only 2 survivors, and when they made it to a nearby fort that held around 80 soldiers, the warriors managed to slaughter them as well. To add insult to injury, their bodies were thrown into the cave, left to rot. So there are my top 10 scary holes that are scattered across the earth. If you know of one that I've missed out, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching and goodbye.